Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. I'm David, and this is Vegas Dave's sports betting channel. This channel wins. Last week, I went over the entire season with everybody, all 32 teams. The entire NFL league with everybody, all 32 teams. Gave my projections for who I thought was going to have a terrible season, some teams I thought might have an easier season, and obviously my best bets for my future bets. This week, I'm going to go ahead and just get started with my week by week handicapping. So this is why I'm here. I love my future bets, but I'm really interested in becoming and proving that I'm a sharp bettor on a weekly basis. So what I went ahead and did is I took all that information that I consolidated from each team, and I'm going to be taking that week to week and stacking it up against opponent versus opponent, and seeing who comes out on top, and hopefully I can get you with some plays that you haven't quite heard yet from around the league. We are 1 week away from NFL opening week. The lines that we're betting on today that I'm going to give you have been out for maybe 4 months since they announced the schedule, of 3 months or something. So all of these numbers, when I saw them, have now moved in some way. What that does is it proves what side the money is going on. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and I will point those changes out to you as we go. So each week I'm going to try to come up with at least 4 bets that I'm going to parlay for up to about $25, hopefully to win about $400 to $500 each week. It's not saying that I'm going to be able to do that every week, but my goal is to have a few weeks where I'm able to go 4 out of 4. I'm not choosing every game. I'm not choosing games that I think are tough choices. I'm choosing games that I think are going to basically are misprints by the odds makers. So if I see an over-under that I think is way too low, I'm planning on its team's total being like 56 and the over-under is at 48, and that's an easy bet for me. We've got an 8-point cushion there, and we should have no trouble hitting that bet. So I'm not looking for anything that's going to come down to a half-point swing here or there. If I can't decide on a side or a team, then I'm going to stay away from the bet. So first bet of the week is going to be a team that I am low on versus a team that I'm high on. I have the Titans going to Denver, and I'm taking the under 42 points. So you can bet two types. You can bet three ways on a football game. You can bet on a side against the spread, which is the number that the odds makers believe will be the difference in the game, in the score. So if the spread is 7, then they believe that one of the teams is going to win by 7, or another team is going to lose by 7. If you bet on the money line, that's just either team to win outright. One team is going to be favorite, and one team is going to be the dog, and get plus money in those instances, unless it's a pick'em, which they're evenly matched. And finally, there's the over-unders, and that's something that I'm actually just now this year going to be pushing. I've never been a fan of over-unders. They're very, very hard to predict because the referees play a huge, huge role in the over-unders. As of right now, I have not been able to access the referees for next week's matchups. I believe they come out a week prior, and since Sunday is not a week away, I don't know if I have the matchups yet. I imagine they do know who's going to go down to Sao Paulo, but that's not the game that we're focusing on. So Titans Broncos under 42. Quick synopsis: that game's going to be a lot of defense, a ton of defense, and a lot of running the ball. So you got a rookie quarterback, Cam Ward. I don't think they're going to just give him the reins and let him sling the ball all over the field out there in the high altitude. So I have a feeling they're going to be a heavy run team in this game. While Denver has a great defense, that's going to lead to an underscore by the Titans. And then the Titans have, and I've said this already, have an extremely underrated defense coming off of last year's number 2 overall rankings in the entire league. I think that they're going to put on a bit more of a show for folks, and I think that Denver's going to have a hard time getting over this first game. So it is going to be close, and I do think it's going to be very low scoring. So I've got under 42 points. So I do see this game coming down to a Broncos victory, but I think it's going to be a bit closer than people are anticipating. It's a 7.5 point spread. If Broncos are going to exceed that spread, most people will consider these games to be like an over game, unless you think it's going to be 28-7, total Broncos blowout. So I don't like the spread paired with the over-under, but I don't think the spread is accurate. I think 7.5 points is a lot. I think that the Titans are going to be holding that team to a pretty low offensive performance on NFL opening Sunday. So Titans, Bucs, Broncos under. And then we move on to the NFC South, which I've been hyped on all offseason, and I've been sharing that in my last video and through all my research, that there's a couple teams in this division that I think are going to shine this season. The first matchup that everybody's already talking about, and I haven't heard anybody talking about necessarily the over-under, but everybody knows that this game's going to be a wild one and nobody can really pick a side. So Bucs, Falcons, and I am going with the over. Two explosive offenses, two defenses that have been middle of the road in the past. Too bad. Let's go with the over, and I believe it's somewhere in the 50s. That's going to be a higher scoring game, but that's okay because that's what's going to happen. They're going to score points. Those are my two favorite over-under picks. I said I was going to give you four. Well, this week I actually have 6 bets I'm going to state. The first two, those are strong over-unders in my opinion. I think that the Broncos Titans under is lock, and I think that the Bucs Falcons over is a lock. The next one I'm going to give you is kind of a throw it on at your own risk, but here's another over that is probably going to pop on the board. There's certain games where the over-under will be set at 48 and the game will come to a score of 70. So they do make mistakes, and I think that this is an instance, Panthers versus the Jags, is an instance where the entire world thinks that these are two bad teams coming together, and it's not going to be much fun to watch. I'm of the impression that these two franchises both have something to prove. The quarterbacks have something to prove, and I think that both of them are going to have an up year, and I think that they might surprise each other's teams with a great performance in week 1, especially because, again, teams have been able to practice for a specific opponent for weeks and weeks. So we should have a pretty good idea of what we're up against and be able to execute offense versus the first team defense. So Panthers, Jags over, and you'll have to check the score on that. I believe it also is in the 50s, a bit higher, maybe 48. All right, and now for the fun ones. So those are the last picks. Over-unders are all based on offense, defensive matchups. That's, in my mind, that's becoming more simple, an easier way to predict bets. We're only going to know after my record comes in if that's correct, if I'm right. As I mentioned before, I've always had trouble handicapping over-unders, and they come down to a bit. It comes down to a bit too much uncertainty, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and get started on this season and take a shot. So there's 3 bets for you, and these next ones are my money line favorites. You will notice that this is where all my preseason handicapping comes into play, because not only am I betting on a team to win, but I'm actually also betting on the opponent to lose. So as you remember from my last week, my number 1 auto fade team, the New Orleans Saints. I've got them in week 1 hosting the Cardinals. Oh boy, this game was this game's no fun for week 1. No fun to handicap at all. I don't think the Cardinals are going to be very good. Everyone knows that the Saints are not going to be very good. And it's week 1, so they've had a lot of time to practice for each other. So this whole first week is going to have to be, and this is going to go across the board to all the sharps that are on YouTube and ESPN and CBS, all these places. It's week 1, so everybody's going to have a little bit of growing pains this year. I'm sure there's somebody that's going to nail it, but most people are going to go through growing pains. I think that the Cardinals could drop this game to the worst team in the league, but we have to go with the numbers that my system created, right? So I'm going to stick to what I know, and what I know is that New Orleans is bad, bad, bad. So let's go Cardinals money line in New Orleans for one of our first locks. Here we go in number 2. Another team that is also on my auto fade list that we actually caveated that they're going to be a bit, they might be a bit of a surprise, or they might actually perform better than we initially anticipated because they made a quarterback choice, and that is the Indianapolis Colts versus the Dolphins. Colts choosing Daniel Jones as their quarterback, I believe, makes them a slightly more competitive team on offense, and one not to be taken lightly when it comes to the third and fourth quarter and keeping it the score or keeping a team down. So I've got Miami money line in Indy for week 1. I am fading Indy. So both of these first 2 bets are bets against the losers more so than they are for the winners. I'm aware that every team in this league can beat any team in this league. So when it comes down to my choice, all I'm doing is taking the best chances and putting them all in the same ticket. Whether we hit it or not, remains to be seen. And then finally, this one is one that's everybody's on, and it's not going to be a pretty as far as numbers go, but Broncos money line versus Tennessee at home. I don't know if it's going to be pretty, but I don't see Denver losing that game to Tennessee. I just don't like the 7.5 points. So, real quick recap: Cardinals money line, Dolphins money line, Broncos money line for week 1 in your parlay. The reason I'm specifying that I'm putting all these on a parlay is because I am focused on money lines this week, since it is week 1. Because I'm choosing money lines, some of my favorites. In fact, the Dolphins are an underdog. So, look, I just don't see how you give Indy a favored line. I don't see how the Colts get a favored line against the Miami Dolphins playing in Indy, playing in Miami, playing on Mars. I don't care where they play. Based on these odds, Indy's going to have a way better year than anybody expected. But I am going to go ahead and fade that. And there's 31 other teams that I can keep my eye on, and I just don't think that Indy is going to be a worthwhile one to concern myself with. So be careful. Obviously, the odds makers disagree with me, and a lot of sharps are staying away from some of these games that I'm on, like Cardinals versus New Orleans or Dolphins versus Indy. But in my opinion, they haven't come up with any good bets all week either. So you can ride with all the basic dudes online and go with the Broncos as your week 1 like millions pick lock and your cover lock and all this stuff. But I think that game is going to be a little tighter than people think. And then, nobody wants to touch any of these over-unders with the Panthers Jags because they're unproven as a unit. But that's exactly why we can sneak in and get some of these plays early in the season. We can sneak under the radar and get away with. Nobody knows if the Panthers and Jags are going to be able to score a lot of points. I think they are. I'm sharp. I'm betting it. When this hits and they pop off over the score by 20 points, next week they're gonna realign these numbers. So we want to catch them slipping, and then we also want to remember that they're going to catch themselves with mistakes too, and they're going to correct. They're going to course correct. They think that some team is great, and then the Broncos go ahead and lay an egg and get beat up by Tennessee. Next week, the Broncos line is going to reflect that, and they're going to show that they're not quite as good as we thought they were. All right, I am comfortable calling it there. Another couple random little sneaky picks you can make. You got the Pittsburgh versus the Jets under, Chargers versus the Raiders under. I think that the Chargers-Raiders game is going to be hilarious. I know I put the Raiders on my auto fade, and you don't see the Chargers on this bet list, but that's because it's a division game, and right now the Chargers, with their offensive line issues, I'm not really sure exactly what they're going to look like just yet. So I'm going to hold off on betting against the Raiders this week, and I will pick it up next week. Like I mentioned, Pittsburgh is going to the Jets. That game is going to be probably a lot of run and a lot of very little scoring. So I'm going to go with the under. I could see the under hitting on that game. And a couple upset alerts. These are two games that I already put on for over-unders, but I think that Atlanta can beat Tampa. I don't know that they will, but I think that they can, and you're gonna hear me say that every game this year with Atlanta, because they have the talent to beat anybody. But whether they do it or not, that's up to them. Carolina also against the Jags. I think that they're going to be an underdog, and I could see them going in there and surprising the Jags. But that game, again, is going to come down to who has the ball last. That's what I believe, that it'll come down to who has the ball last. So Carolina could be a good upset pick just in the sheer chance that it's a coin flip as to who's going to end up with that last 2-minute possession. So if they have the ball and all they need is a field goal to win, that's a solid bet. So hopefully y'all enjoy these picks. Hopefully you were able to catch my graphics of all the numbers, and I believe you should be able to get all the betting details down in the notes or information of this video. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully my videos can stay a little bit more reasonable length like this one now that I've gotten all the bulk of information off my chest. I will try not to come back on here and edit any of these picks each week, but remember, we are only in week 1, so please go easy on me. I will be able to readjust as I see what teams start to shine and what teams start to fall, and we're gonna nail the books. We're gonna nail the books a few times this year. I can't wait. Every week, I believe that it's gonna be the week that I hit. As I broke it down, clearly I can. It's just a matter of whether the stars align. So thanks for tuning in. This channel wins money. So let's do it. Follow my bets or fade them, whatever you want.